This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Good afternoon, everyone. As agreed at the Assembly's annual meeting on the 6th of May 2025, the Confirmations Hearing Committee is allowed to appoint a chair on a meeting-by-meeting basis for the 25-26 Assembly year. For the first item of business, I'll conduct an election for the chair for this meeting in accordance with the GLA standing orders. In the event of one candidate being nominated, I'll declare the nominated candidate chair of the Confirmations Hearings Committee for this meeting. A proposer and seconder is required for each nomination. In the event of two candidates being nominated, I'll ask for votes in favour of each candidate. Could I ask for any nominations, please?
Yes, Assembly Member Small-Edwards.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to second that nomination?
I would like to second that nomination.
Thank you very
Unless
much.
somebody else would like to second that nomination. I don't think you.
And are there any other nominations, please? In that case, I declare Assemblymember Small Edwards is elected as Chair of the Confirmation Hearings Committee for today's meeting. Chair.
Thank you, everyone. And good afternoon. Can I now welcome everyone to this meeting of the Confirmation Hearings Committee? Please make sure electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. The Chair of the Assembly has agreed that this meeting be called as a matter of urgency in order to hold a confirmation hearing for the Mayor's proposed appointee to the office of Chair of the Oxford Street Development Corporation, with 3 weeks of the date of receipt of the notification from the Mayor in accordance with Section 100B of the Local Government Act 1972. Can I now ask our clerk, Paul Goodchild, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Assemblymember Hall, for whom Assemblymember Boff is here as substitute, and from Assemblymember Wilson. And in accordance with Standing Order 8.2, Assemblymember Bakari is attending the meeting as a non-voting observer.
Thank you for that update. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 4 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Can I also invite Scott Parsons to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to the proposed appointment?
I don't think there are any conflicts.
Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note its membership and terms of reference as agreed by the London Assembly at the annual meeting on the 6th of May 2025?
Noted.
Can I welcome Scott Parsons to the meeting? The committee will be putting questions to you in relation to your proposed appointment to the office of Chair of OSDC. However, can I first ask members to note the background information circulated within the agenda for the meeting? Thank you. We'll now move on to the question and answer session. The first question will be from myself, and it is, what key aspects of your knowledge and experience would you bring to the role of Chair of the Oxford Street Development Corporation?
It's a good question, and I think I'd answer it with, in my background, I've got a mix of non-exec and executive roles. And I think as chairman, it's very important to understand what your role is and how it interplays with the role of the CEO and the executive team. So I think that's probably a critical role for the chairman.
And in terms of direct experience and roles, can you highlight what it is in your previous background in retail which you think enables you to have not only the ability to navigate that process, but actually to fundamentally understand what is needed on Oxford Street itself?
It's a good question and a big question. I've spent 12 years running 2 different retail real estate companies, UK businesses, and it's been quite a roller coaster of a ride because you've had the rise of online. You've had the COVID crisis. And I think one of the things that attracted me to this role is I think like almost everybody else in the UK, I sort of mourn the decline and the challenges faced by the high street. And I like the idea that perhaps I can play a small part in rejuvenating the nation's high street, not just for the economic benefits for London, but for the psychological benefits for the UK as a whole. It's the bellwether for the UK high street. And I think having spent 6 years running Landsec's retail portfolio and 5.5 years running Westfield's UK business, I think that's exposed me to some of the challenges that are being thrown at a retail business every day. But it's also taught me that with a lot of willpower, with a lot of effort and creativity, the high street and retail destinations can be sustainable and resilient.
Thank you very much. And what other qualifications and experience do you think OSDC will require among the other board members and senior officers?
I think first and foremost, the board and the executive team will need to be highly skilled in stakeholder management and collaboration. There are so many different interested parties. that will want and need to have input into such a high-profile project. So I'd say that is the absolute number one criteria. And then you get into a lot of the practical skill sets. Clearly, development and delivery is important. Commercialization and knowledge of partnerships is important to generate revenue. Communications and media, the list goes on and on, but I'd say the top one is stakeholder management and collaboration across communities.
Thank you. Then just in terms of your main priorities, what would your main priorities be if you've become the chair of OSDC?
I'd have to say it's delivery. You know, let's make this happen. Regeneration of Oxford Street will have such far-reaching knock-on effects to the communities around, to retailers, to London's economy, and as I mentioned before, to the psychology of rejuvenating high streets throughout the country. I think Oxford Street it's as a brand, it's suffered a little bit. It needs a little bit of polish. And I think with a bit of polish, it can be back on the map as one of the top and best known, best loved high streets in the world, not just the UK.
And in terms of that suffering you mentioned, do you think pedestrianisation is a way of delivering the rejuvenation that Oxford Street needs in your view?
And I know pedestrianisation is not a shoe-in. That won't be a decision for me to make, but I'll certainly share my opinion. I've run retail businesses for a long time, and I think I can hand on heart say that the number one determinant about whether a retail destination is going to thrive or it's going to suffer is footfall generation. So for me, I look at it really simply. Oxford Street, if it's pedestrianised, footfall capacity will increase. Public realm space will increase, and that should generate footfall, and footfall will generate success.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Boff.
Did you just say that the pedestrianisation is not a fait accompli? It's not.
I believe there are more consultations and whatnot to get through.
Right, but the mayor's motive for the MDC was pedestrianisation.
Agree, and that was a lot of motivation for me applying for this role too.
But you're saying it's not certain.
I'm saying I'm not certain the rest of the process that it has to go through before it's all teed up and confirmed.
You talked. I mean, you have got an extensive, without doubt, you've got an extensive background in property development. What kind of property development do you expect Oxford Street MDC to be undertaking? Bearing in mind there's very little vacant space on Oxford Street.
My guess is that it will focus on public realm.
Public realm.
There'll be some traffic management development that'll need to take place as well.
Okay, so no property development per se, as far as you can see, or little, and more about just the public realm. That's useful. Do you plan to will you retain interests in development companies whilst chairing the MDC, if you have any?
Well, I intend to keep my day job. I've got to pay the bills, but the overlap between the Mayor's Development Corporation and my day job is de minimis. I work as CEO of a logistics and infrastructure developer.
So you don't hold any other interests in development companies apart from this logistics one?
I still have a few shares in Unibail Rodamco Westfield. But,
right. When you have conflicts, how will you conduct yourself in the event of a conflict over something you personally benefit from and the programme of the MDC?
It's a good question, and I think one of the most important roles of a chairman is to ensure good governance. So I would certainly expect not just me, but all the non-exec directors to declare any interests at all that might conflict, and if necessary to stand aside from a vote on a relevant issue.
Thank you. I'll go on to my set questions now. So what do you see are the biggest challenges facing Oxford Street as a retail destination? Bearing in mind, I put it in some context, it's not as though it's all boarded up. People still shop there, and the area around it is thriving. And so what do you see as the biggest challenges?
I think some of the biggest challenges around Oxford Street relate to the tenancy mix. I think there's been a lot of work by the New West End Company and Westminster Council to address that, but there's still a ways to go. If I think back, I've lived in London for 35 years, and I think back to the Oxford Street of old, and the tenancy mix isn't quite as vibrant as it could be. I think the pavements are quite crowded. I think some thought needs to be put into accessibility to make sure that all people can negotiate their way comfortably and safely along Oxford Street.
It becomes, if that is your objective, of course, accessibility is going to be an issue if there are no buses going down Oxford Street. How do you intend to resolve that?
Please do allow me to get my feet under the table first, because I know design work has been kicked off, but I haven't had any sight of it.
Okay,
yet.
thank you for that. Do you see that there may be a need to diversify away from retail, for instance, into leisure and hospitality on Oxford Street?
Absolutely. I think, again, it boils down to what's going to drive footfall, because footfall will drive success. And I think what we've seen from a lot of the more sustainable, the more resilient retail destinations is that they've diversified their offer into other uses that drive footfall.
Because Oxford Street is a hotspot of crime, and there's about 40,000 reported crimes a year in just the West End ward of Westminster. How do you plan to address this, bearing in mind that pedestrianisation can sometimes be a less safe environment in terms of crime than something with a traffic going down the middle?
Well, it's an important question. I'm sure it'll be a very important work stream. And again, I haven't got into the design detail yet, but what I can say after 30 years of developing is that every pound spent on proper design work, on placemaking and public realm and reinvention and refurbishment pays dividends in terms of public safety and reduction in crime.
Okay. And that's, I mean, I would have liked to have seen that as one of the priorities that you gave us, to be frank, because it is a problem. Given that there's been quite high levels of homelessness in Westminster, and there was a rather prominent squatting encampments at Park Lane, just outside the area. How will you ensure that Oxford Street will not develop into another tent city?
Early days, but what I will say is I imagine that will involve consultation that goes well beyond just the Oxford Street Development Corporation. That'll be engaging with Westminster, with Camden, with local charities, with the New West End Company to make sure that the issue, not just the issue can be addressed, but hopefully some of the root cause.
Right. And how will you... I mean, I'm interested. I'm going to go slightly... I don't want to tread on somebody else's question, but I'm in danger of it because it's already been raised. You talked about priority being stakeholder management. How will you manage? How will you manage that? Because you know, at the moment, Westminster's doing actually not a bad job in its plans for Oxford Street. We could always criticise little parts of it, but it's doing quite not too badly. How will you ensure that that expertise that's been built up by Westminster isn't then lost?
I think it's important to note that stakeholder management won't just rest on my shoulders. Hopefully there'll be a fantastic board of non-execs that can help divide up some of that stakeholder engagement and come from a broad range of experience. I believe 3 of the non-execs will be from Westminster and 1 from Camden, so there should be quite broad representation around the boardroom table.
Yeah, because they're going to, what say do you think you're going to have in deciding who those non-execs are?
I believe I will attend some of the interview panels, but I don't believe I have a vote.
Mm-hmm. Because currently the plans are that there's only 1 councillor from Westminster who will be sitting on the board.
I'm so sorry, I haven't had the short list or even the long list as yet.
I understand what you say about appointees from Westminster, but as of right, there's only 1 councillor who will be entitled to sit on there. What's going to happen if you find yourself, well, in the past, what has happened when you found yourself in conflict with a stakeholder? And that may very well happen with Westminster, bearing in mind that the future plans for the pedestrianisation are going to require a lot of work for Westminster to accommodate those pedestrianisation plans outside the MDC area. So how are you going to manage, how have you managed in the past situations where there's quite clearly a conflict of stakeholders?
It's not always easy. I think what I try and do is be as collaborative as possible and not just think of things from my perspective, but try and understand where the other party's coming from and where their concerns lie. Hopefully, everyone will be aligned around the goal of the regeneration of Oxford Street, and if we can just keep that long-term ambition, seeking the betterment of Oxford Street, hopefully we can corral and align some potentially differing views.
Thank you. I'm surprised you didn't mention when I talked about the challenges earlier, the challenges facing Oxford Street. It didn't raise the VAT and the business rate regimes because you've asked for changes for those taxes in the past, haven't you?
Yes.
Do you see that as a real challenge if the government decides not to introduce tax refunds for tourists?
Well, I think you'd have to look at everything as a whole, and that's just one element. I think the regeneration of Oxford Street will generate a return for Londoners, both in terms of public realm and economic benefits, and I think that would just be one part of it that would have to be looked at.
Will you, as chair, continue to lobby the government as you have done in the past over tax changes that would benefit Oxford Street?
I don't think so.
You don't? I'd rather hope you would. And you've also in the past spoken about business rates reform. How will you be using the business rates powers of Oxford Street, MDC?
I think that's something that, that I'd have to get my feet under the table to comment on.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, obviously we mentioned the struggles and difficulties that the High Street has faced, a lot of it down to online retail, but some of it also down to big shopping malls like Westfield, and in many ways Westfield and the West End or Oxford Street compete for a lot of the same customers, be they domestic or international. Would you agree with that framing that I've put forward, and how do you think Oxford Street can compete against places like Westfield, and do you think there's a potential conflict between your previous role and the role that you'll be holding as chair?
Thankfully, I'm not in that previous role anymore, so that conflict won't arise. And I guess as COO of Westfield in the UK, we did see Oxford Street as competition to some extent, but actually, I think they can live very harmoniously as complementary retail destinations, because what's on offer with Oxford Street and what's potentially on offer with its regeneration will be quite different. You know, Westfield is a covered, enclosed, temperature-controlled. It's a different environment from Oxford Street, which is very urban, which is probably more differentiated and more sort of a fabric, part of the fabric of the West End. I think people will go to Oxford Street not just for a shop, but also for a day out, for an experience.
Thank you. Assemblymember Russell.
Thank you. And before I move on to my questions about pedestrianisation, I just want to pick up on this bit that we've been talking about around the challenges facing Oxford Street. Oxford Street is a real opportunity to revitalise central London, as you've been talking about, and make it into an attractive destination. But we've now got a situation where shoppers are a bit less interested in physical shops, and the cost of living crisis means people don't have so much money in their pockets. So what do you think the opportunities are for this new MDA that are not focused on the actual shopping, the sort of consumer bit?
It's a great question, and it's one that actually excites me quite a lot about pedestrianisation, because I see pedestrianisation as an equaliser. You don't have to enjoy a beautiful public realm and environment only if you're shopping. You know, families can walk down Oxford Street if it was pedestrianised and not have to worry about traffic. I think it's an equaliser, and I think that opportunity is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And do you sort of also, obviously you've worked on things like Westfield, so do you have a sort of a vision for a sort of diverse, culturally rich Oxford Street, just sort of going a bit beyond pedestrianisation allows families to walk down the road and enjoy it? Do you think there's an opportunity to do more than shopping?
Absolutely. I think there's scope to have pop-ups, to have events, to have all sorts of differentiated offer. It's essentially public space that isn't available to pedestrians now, that will be in the future. So I think the scope is endless.
Mm-hmm. And do you, I mean, something that my former Assembly colleague Sean Berry worked on was dead spaces, you know, the kind of the unused or currently unused shop fronts, and making sure that they get activated by sort of community interest companies and the like. Do you think that there's scope for activity that is not actually going to be generating lots of funding, that is that's actually delivering cultural diversity benefit in terms of the offer of what's happening along Oxford Street?
Absolutely. At Westfield, actually, when vacancy was at its peak, we worked with a lot of community organisations to activate vacant space, and so I think the scope for that is phenomenal.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to pedestrianisation, sort of Yes, can you talk about any experience you've had working with other pedestrianised retail environments, and also if there's anything else you want to add about the importance of pedestrianisation for Oxford Street's future?
Clearly, the Westfields were covered and enclosed, so we had pedestrianised elements around the centres. But this will be my first time working on a project that is so focused on one road and regenerating it. And
yes, sort of, is there anything extra you want to say about the importance of pedestrianisation in terms of Oxford Street?
I think from my experience, the areas that are pedestrianised are less hostile in terms of vehicle traffic. So they're more conducive to family gatherings. They're more conducive to those with disabilities. They're just more inclusive spaces.
And do you see Oxford Street linking into a kind of network of walkable streets, or do you just see it as like an isolated piece of pedestrianisation in the centre of London?
Well, I hope it will inspire local authorities and landlords alike to work together to come up with a vision for the West End and its walkability as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And do you have experience of kind of pulling those different stakeholders together to achieve sort of big goals like that? I mean, obviously, you're taking the chair, the governance role, but your experience in practice is actually useful to the person who's got the exec function. So, yes, what experience do you have of sort of pulling together the different stakeholders that can actually make something happen that sort of goes beyond what, that sort of goes that extra step?
I guess in my role at Westfield and previous roles at Landsec, our assets were usually quite large, and often they were amongst the top 3 employers in their borough, one of the biggest charitable donors, and the area with the highest footfall. So inevitably, we were always coordinating with a number of different stakeholders about planning applications, about charity efforts, about security. So I'm pretty used to bringing stakeholders together to try and deliver a good result.
Thank you. And then, did you go to the Traffic-Free Day in September on Oxford Street?
I did indeed.
It was great, wasn't it?
I have to confess, this might have been a conflict. Maybe I should have declared it. But until 3 weeks ago, I was a local resident, and I lived on the corner of Duke Street and Wayhouse Street. So I was right on the red line.
So you did. Did you think there were any lessons to learn from that day?
Well, I didn't see it in terms of lessons. I saw it in terms of teasers. I thought the atmosphere was brilliant. People were out in force and smiling and not worrying about cars. And it wasn't just the high street shops. There were a variety of food and beverage and retail on offer. Photo exhibits, just the pop-ups all along Oxford Street were fantastic to see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of thought the popularity of it actually kind of, I mean, presumably if it's kind of there every day, then that's a different thing. But it was very crowded. So it's it's like there's only so much road space. But if it can be that full every day, that would be probably very good for all the shops. You mentioned earlier something about accessibility and the importance of accessibility. So what do you think the Oxford Street Development Corporation can do to ensure that pedestrianisation is positive for anyone who has access needs, who's trying to get along Oxford Street?
I think the key is get the design brief right and make sure that that's high on the agenda for the architects working on design. And again, it boils down to the footfall comment I made earlier on. Key to Oxford Street's success will be drive footfall. And if you're trying to drive footfall, you want to open it up to the widest audience possible, and you can't exclude any element of London society.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of you'd see the sort of disability campaign organisations as being the state part within the group of stakeholders that you'll be making sure that the exec team are engaging with as the plans are developed.
I think they're a great source of information. Yeah.
And experience too.
And experience.
Yeah. Public toilets. Everyone knows I care massively about public toilets. And I think in the motion that we passed about making the MDC happen, there was a line in about inclusivity and public toilets. Do you see supporting having good public toilets on Oxford Street as part of making this a successful project?
I haven't had insight into the design brief yet, so I'm not sure I can comment with any inside knowledge. But from my perspective, dwell time benefits a high street, and if you can increase dwell time by providing facilities that people need if they're sticking around for a few hours, then I'm supportive.
Yeah, I think it's a huge accessibility issue as well, because there are some people just can't go somewhere unless there are toilets available. So, yeah, thank you. And then, have you ever been involved in a sort of, from a more transporty perspective, I suppose with Westfield it's all inside space, so you've got complete control. Whereas what's, I think, going to be challenging about Oxford Street is the knock-on, the fact that Oxford Street is not something that just exists in isolation. It's stitched together with the rest of London through both north-south routes, but also parallel routes. You've been a resident locally, you know that people have lots of views about not wanting extra traffic on their road. So do you see the kind of that whole debate and discussion about how to pedestrianise Oxford Street as being something that will be, do you see that as something that will be sort of area-wide? And do you think you've got any experience, relevant or skills to bring to that conversation?
It's a good question. And I'm sure it will be a big question. And I believe TfL are launching their consultation this month, which should provide a lot of good information. I haven't got stuck in yet, but my honest answer is I've never worked on something of that scale in terms of implications before.
But so, do you have a sense of what the sort of it can get very noisy with these transport projects. Do you have a sense of, you're going to be working with the chief exec as chair of the board? Do you have a sense of how that process could be very challenging?
Yes, I've been through it before, perhaps not on that scale, but every time we do a major development, there are traffic management reports, there's noise reports, there's footfall and directional reports that need to be done. A lot of studies, and I'm sure those will.
Yeah, when I say it can be very noisy, I don't mean the noise of the traffic. I mean the noise of the different voices that come up with opinions.
Absolutely.
And you're used to dealing with that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Go to Assemblymember Bacon and to Assemblymember Boff on the same issue.
Thank you. Yes, just to follow up, so just to say I'm chair of the Transport Committee, so these are all of great interest, but I do appreciate that it's not your job to manage all of the transport impacts, but it is of great interest, I think, to all of us about how you're going to make sure that those impacts are going to be managed. And just building on what Assembly Member Russell said about like the area-wide impacts, the success or failure, I believe, of Oxford Street pedestrianisation and the MDC, it won't just be down to how Oxford Street feels. It'll be knock-on effect, particularly for impact on like bus routes, because we're obviously part of this massive like transport network. So even further than area-wide, there are potentially sort of much wider impacts for changing the nature of that central corridor. So on that, I suppose, how will you ensure that, bearing in mind that obviously you're focused on the MDC, that you're able to ensure that the organisation is appropriately taking into account the impact on London on a wider basis? Because, of course, that's, as you say, you want to deliver, but it's not just going to be what you can do on that street. Does that make sense? How are you going to make sure that you have the right people, access to right expertise, so that you're able to get the right information in that team and exercise the right governance? Is that making sense, or do you need to be more specific?
I think it's a key. It will be a key work stream within the Oxford Street Development Corporation. I haven't got into the skin of what the plans are for the organisation itself under the CEO, but I think it just needs somebody that recognises the importance of that work stream and manages it well, and liaises with stakeholders effectively.
Yeah, and do you have a sense of that danger that it could work on Oxford Street but somehow get brought down publicly by how it impacts the rest of London? Is that a danger that you've identified, or?
Well, I think it's a danger that you'd have to be aware of. I'd call it a risk, but I think it's a risk that can be overcome. Any major infrastructure project has impacts and has a few teething issues, and we'll just have to work through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And related to that, obviously there is a huge amount of public scrutiny and public interest in the work on Oxford Street, the MDC and the pedestrianisation, and obviously its relationship with the Mayor and the London Assembly and the GLA and everything like that. So how do you think, what similar experiences have you been through with that level of sort of public scrutiny? Some people maybe not wanting it to work. Have you got any sense of how you deal with that, and what experiences you have previously that might be similar to that?
I'd say it sounds probably simple as an answer to that, but I think key is just communication. Share with the public your plans, how you're thinking about and addressing the concerns. Share what's troubling you with some of your stakeholders and hear their input. And I think it's just all about talking openly.
Yeah, well, I think as a scrutiny body, we'd back that position. Yeah. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Boff.
Of course, the traffic-free day, which has been hailed as a great success, was put in without any consultation whatsoever with disabled groups, local residents, local councillors. Not sure if the Assembly member was notified beforehand. But apart from the legal minimum, will you do better than that? Will you ensure, as chair of the MDC, that the consultation will be better than we saw on the traffic-free day?
I'm afraid that was before my time. So
it was before your time.
I don't have the.
I'm not blaming you.
Oh, no,
I just want to know if it's going to be better.
I'm just saying I don't have the context to compare it to, but I can say I'll do my best.
Right. With regard to the, there's going to be junction improvements required as a result of the MDC or the pedestrianisation? Who do you think should, outside the MDC area, who do you think should pay for those?
I haven't had any insight into the budget figures or even the process to come to the budget, so please do allow me the chance to get my feet under the table.
Well, we will be asking you back if you are successful. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Assemblymember Baker.
Thanks. And moving on from that, my questions are on funding. And I appreciate you've said, obviously, you're not in post, you're not across all the budgets and everything like that. But of course, in deciding whether you wanted to take the role, and obviously your focus on delivery, you'll have a sense of how it will be delivered. So particularly on the costs of improvements to the public realm and pedestrianisation. So the initial estimate is that it will cost 150 million. Now, that seems low in terms of the ongoing amount that we might want spent on Oxford Street. So do you have a sense of where that additional money would come from, and can you assure us that you think that can be raised and it won't be a question of coming back to the GLA for additional money?
Okay. Well, the 150 million, I've seen that figure in the round, but I haven't seen how it's made up. So again, I don't really have the context. But what I will say is, when I was at Landsec, for example, the Piccadilly Lights were within my portfolio. At Westfield, the commercial partnerships, the event management, the brand partnerships, the media capabilities were phenomenal. And that's at a Westfield. This is Oxford Street. Oxford Street is a global brand, so I'm not saying Oxford Street should look like a Times Square. But I am saying that there are commercial opportunities to be exploited, and I think that should help generate revenue.
So is it fair to say that you're pretty comfortable with the prospect of raising additional money? Otherwise you wouldn't be excited to take on the role, presumably. Yeah? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I managed to wrap up both my questions into one question there, so it's back to you.
Thank you. Just following on from that, do you think your previous role as, I believe, an advisory board member at the New West End Company gives you a bit of an advantage as chair, because it's an area I presume you're familiar with as a result of that work?
I think it does. Mainly just because having sat on the board of the New West End Company for a few years, it gave me insight into some of the challenges facing Oxford, and some of those challenges haven't gone away. So I think it is really helpful.
Thank you. Assemblymember Bakari.
Thank you. Just on funding and in terms of raising revenue, in terms of going forward into pedestrianisation of the Oxford Street, I understand that you're a board member of the New West End Company, which has been for a while now campaigning to suspend Sunday trading regulations. Is that something that you might even consider now in this new role, that you'd be perhaps pushing that campaign in towards the whole of Oxford Street as well?
To be honest, I haven't given it any consideration, so I'd rather answer that when I've got a more informed view.
So you don't have a particular view on Sunday trading at all, then, other than you were a board member of that group, but you don't have a view on that campaign?
I was a board member of NWEC a number of years ago. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Before the campaign for Sunday.
So I'm going to focus a little bit more about the borough and community engagement. The planning committee, which we have former chair and chair from, in the recommendations from the planning committee, there was a quite clear push for significant and meaningful consultation. And without proper framework for continued engagement, some voices would not be heard. So how will you ensure that decisions made by the Oxford Street Development Corporation are informed by local boroughs and local communities?
Well, we'll have board representation from Camden and Westminster on the Oxford Street Development Corporation board. And I guess it all boils down to the stakeholder work stream and getting out there and talking to as many interested parties as possible.
And have you met any local community representatives already? I know you said you lived near Oxford Street, you moved currently, but have you been meeting with resident associations, resident community groups already, just as a resident yourself?
No.
No, but you plan to be?
I'm absolutely happy to get out there.
That would be a serious consideration for you as in this role, wouldn't it? Yeah. What other groups are you considering meeting?
Do you know, I'd love to see the board assembled and the chief exec nominated and come up with a proper communication and collaboration game plan.
Yeah, so I would hope that maybe disability groups, older Londoners, people who might have a vested interest in making sure that pedestrianisation works for them as well. Have you considered maybe even taxi drivers? They've got quite a strong voice in London as well. Would that be another group of people you'd be considering to meet as well?
Again, I think we'd probably seek as wide a spectrum as possible.
Okay. So there are issues in terms of, for example, Westminster Council, who during the consultation wanted to have an additional nomination on the board. Now, that didn't happen. There's a potential, really, that decisions could be made for the local area where the local boroughs object to plans made by the Oxford Street Development Corporation. How would you deal with that? How would you respond to that? Because they've already shown concerns already about how the board's been formulated. There may be challenges ahead in terms of that kind of relationship. Have you considered how you deal with that?
I haven't considered it yet.
So you feel up to the challenge if it came to a point where there was a bit of an extreme disagreement?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Let's say that there is a decision that you make and the Westminster Council say, no, don't agree with that. Could be anything. How would you deal with that? How would you respond to that?
I guess I'd have to have the context of the issue.
Okay. And in terms of expectations for how long the OSDC is going to be in existence, do you have any expectations on that and how long it will be?
I haven't seen the terms of reference yet, but I understand it's probably going to be in place for a number of years.
Okay. Okay, just one last question on local community concerns. One of the things that was raised in consultations is the antisocial behaviour. Is there any work that you're envisaging in terms of working with local police, making sure that there's consistent community work, that you're engaging with the police to make sure that you're dispelling any concerns about antisocial behaviour?
Absolutely. It'll involve work with the police, work with the architects on design, and as I said, investment in public realm usually pays very strong dividends when it comes to crime reduction and public safety.
Great. And just very quickly again, sorry, one more thing about the event that happened that Sunday. As Assemblymember Boff was just saying, there was that lack of consultation. It's important that those views of residents are really, consulted in all terms of moving forward to pedestrianisation. And I just thought I'd raise with you that I've been contacted by residents about the event itself being very noisy and overcrowded and wasn't very accessible. I think it's important to get those kind of ranges of views that might not always be positive. How would you, are you willing to kind of accept that you're not going to get a positive response from community groups and residents on these kind of occasions that are being put forward, and kind of trying to encourage the spirit of positivity towards pedestrianisation, but not everyone's going to be happy about it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think with any project on this scale, there'll always be a difference in views. But I think hopefully everyone can keep the end goal in sight, and that is the regeneration of Oxford Street, the improvement of Oxford Street. And I think hearing that divergence of views helps you come up with a better path to get to that end goal. Helps you make better decisions.
All right, thank you very much.
Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. It's a follow-up, actually, sort of going back towards funding. But the Mayor has been very open that funding for the Oxford Street plans is going to involve private investment. And we've had some quite large-scale projects in the past in London that have actually fallen over, like the Garden Bridge. So the governance process is incredibly important. Now, I suppose from my perspective, there's also a risk that the public purpose of Oxford Street could potentially be at risk if you've got a lot of private money coming in which is expecting to get particular things back from the contribution that's being made. So do you have a sense of how you'd look at the sort of the outside private funding is incredibly helpful, but it also comes with risks? And yeah, have you got any views on that tension?
That's a good question. It's a tough one. I think the tension can be managed. I think just to use an example of Christmas lights. Christmas light sponsorship generates revenue, and you can manage that tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's sort of thinking about some of the bigger sort of digital advertising type projects. There was quite a lot of outcry about a proposal to have digital wraparound sort of immersive advertising on the Elizabeth line, and a lot of the disability advocacy groups were really concerned about the impact of that on neurodivergent people. And so it's kind of, yeah, it's sort of, so I can see the Christmas lights example, you know, who doesn't like a bit of sparkle at Christmas? Yep. Or in that sort of wintry period of the year, and sort of over the whole period. But it's, there could be tensions between the kind of the inclusive aims of the Oxford Street plans and the commercial objectives as well.
Absolutely, and balance is key. I mean, clearly, developing revenue generators is important in terms of the viability and the sustainability of the development. But if your end game is to create that improved public realm that is accessible to all, that's got to hold the trump card. So you've got to just make sure that the balance is there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had one other thing I wanted to ask. Is that okay? So just have you worked, yes, in the positions where you've had an executive role, have you got examples of really good working relationships with a chair? And have you got with the chair of a board of trustees? And have you got a sense of what you think your role as chair of the board of this in relation to enabling the executive team to get on and achieve what they want to do? What do you think you need to do to make them as successful as possible?
It's a good question, and what I've found on both sides of the relationship, whether I've been the exec managed by a chair or the chair rallying an exec team, I found what's worked most successfully for me is keeping up an atmosphere constructive challenge. You know, I kind of think it's a chairman's job to throw a few friendly grenades in the way of the executive team and get them thinking, avoiding groupthink, thinking creatively, and never taking away their accountability, because as the exec team, they've got to feel the ownership. They've got to feel they own it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Wolf.
I know you haven't been able to answer a lot of the questions because you don't know many of the details of what the regeneration is going to look like because the MDC isn't there, but you've got to understand that we don't know what the details are either, and we gave permission for this MDC to go ahead without really knowing what we were giving permission for. So the Mayor's promised a consultation on the full impacts of pedestrianisation between Oxford Circus and Orchard Street, that first tranche. But this is yet to materialise, and I just wondered whether or not the Mayor has told you when he expects that to be published.
He hasn't yet.
He hasn't. I mean, and you alluded to earlier, you said this is about regeneration, it wasn't about pedestrianisation. I think some members think it was about pedestrianisation, the whole MDC. But you said that wasn't a certainty. I mean, if pedestrianisation proves impossible, is the MDC still justified?
Well, I guess in my mind, the regeneration of Oxford Street is the prize that hopefully we're all Londoners are united behind. And if pedestrianisation is the best ticket to get there, which I think it is, then hopefully it can be achieved. But I do hope that that irrespective, regeneration is sought after and accomplished.
So irrespective of whether or not pedestrianisation takes place, you still think the aim of regeneration is enough work for the MDC to do? If there's no pedestrianisation.
Well, I think pedestrianisation is a no-brainer personally, so I hope it goes hand in hand and drives the optimal outcome for Oxford Street's regeneration.
I mean, because if pedestrianisation proves not possible, then we're back to where the situation was under Westminster Council, who have tried to face those challenges over many years of pedestrianisation. If you don't live on Oxford Street, it's very easy to say it should be pedestrianised. Or live. It's very easy to say it should be pedestrianised. I always like some other street pedestrianised. But it's been a problem for that council for over decades. Now we're going to solve it. Now, it was impossible for Westminster for good reasons. Why do you think it's not going to be impossible for the MDC?
Clearly, I'm an optimist. Otherwise, I wouldn't have risen to the challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do any assembly members have any further questions? Can I thank Scott for attending today's meeting? You can now leave, but you may sit and observe the committee's discussion from the public gallery if you wish.
I think I might need a nap after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The committee is now required to make a decision on its recommendations to the Mayor as to whether or not the nominee should be appointed as chair of OSDC. There are three possible resolutions. First one, that it be agreed to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Scott Parsons to the office of Chair of Oxford Street Development Corporation. Second one, that it be agreed not to object to the proposed appointment of Scott Parsons to the office of Chair of Oxford Street Development Corporation and to write to the Mayor with further comment. And lastly, that it be agreed not to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Scott Parsons to the office of Chair of Oxford Street Development Corporation. Would anyone like to start off the discussion?
It's not against this particular candidate. I don't think any candidate is able to do this because so little information is available as to what the job is. So little information. We don't know when the pedestrianisation is going to happen. There is no information about the funding. There is no information about how the disabled groups are going to be consulted. There is no structure in place. There was more structure in place when we established things like the LLDC, ODPC. We knew what we were doing then. We really don't know what we're appointing to. And I think it's I mean, I would say not to recommend, though I don't want to particularly pick on this candidate because I don't think anybody would have been able to answer many more questions than we'd already asked because the information isn't there.
Member Bakari.
So I think my recommendation would be to add a line in terms of a caveat and saying that we should invite I mean, this is just totally up to you, Chair, but having a line to say that once there is some more detail to come, to Planning Committee, to be able to answer some of the questions that, they weren't being able to answer about consultation, etc. I think that's something that you could add, just so that there's some reassurance of, once we get those details, it will give the Planning Committee at least a chance to scrutinise the role and the position that he has on things like consultation, which was very lacking in terms of any idea or direction of where that was going.
So just for clarity, was that a suggestion not to object with a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine to go ahead with the appointment as long as there's that kind of caveat of extra scrutiny from the Planning Committee. But that's, it's up to you, Chair, if you think that's a good idea.
Assemblymember Russell.
I think that Assemblymember Boff's problem with this is beside the point for the job that we've been asked to do this afternoon. We've been asked to look at someone to see whether they would be a good chair of the board in relation to an executive that are trying to implement pedestrianisation and regeneration of Oxford Street. And so I think our assessment is whether this person is appropriate, this candidate is appropriate to be chair of the board. And I thought that we heard a kind of good sense of both sides of the line of being an exec working to a chair and being a chair and having a real sense of how that governance role works. So I think I would be in the recommend camp, and I would hope that the candidate kind of took heed of the questions that we were asking about, because I think those may well be quite helpful in fulfilling the role of chair if he's appointed.
Thank you. Assemblymember Baker.
Thanks, Chair. I agree. I understand Assemblymember Boff's concerns about the detail of pedestrianisation. I'm very interested in the detail of that from a transport point of view. I did not expect, and we didn't really ask him for the detail of that today, because it wouldn't be appropriate for him to be on top of that level of detail for, let's face it, a governance role that is a number of days a month. If he was the person that I wanted to be on top of the transport thing for that amount of time, I'd be extremely worried. So it is about experience of governance, experience in that setting, in that retail setting. He clearly has those. I hear Assemblymember Bakari's issues about, suggestion about a line in it about further recommendations. But again, that's about a level of detail that I'm not entirely sure that we should be asking him for. Of course, I'm sure we can ask him back many, many times. But the question is, as I always say in these meetings, this is the role, this is the person specification. Does he fit this person specification? Not what do we think about the project overall. And I think he does, and I think we should recommend acceptance.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Yeah, in terms of the ongoing role of the Planning and Regeneration Committee, it is that committee's role to oversee the development corporation. So that is something that we can definitely continue to do, and I'm sure continue to do under any successive chair as well. Assemblymember Boff.
I tell you what's been said in the way, and I wish no insult against Scott Cameron. Scott Cameron Parsons, because he obviously is well qualified for doing loads of things. To be honest, well qualified. It's whether or not we think we can approve an appointment to something that, and we don't know what it is. We don't actually know what this is. We've got that, but there are no outline plans. And I take what Assemblymember Bakari has said is about the Planning and Regen Committee. When we first heard of the plans, we sent a whole raft of questions to the Mayor about things like consulting with disabled people, about where the buses were going to go, about crime and about all the rest of it, and he didn't answer a single one of them. A single one of them. And we want to do that again. I mean, how many times do we have to bang ourselves heads against a brick wall over this? Because we're just getting nothing from the Mayor whatsoever. And to appoint a person to what is fundamentally a mayoral vanity project, I think is ridiculous. But, I'm not going to be offended or fight against Mr. Parsons being appointed. But I just think it's a waste of everybody's time. I really do.
Assemblymember Baker.
At the risk of this getting into a back and forth, those are all objections to the project, not objections to the appointment to the post, which, like it or not, we have agreed will exist. And if there are concerns about, this is what we're here to do, to decide whether this role, he is the right fit for it, or if we have specific concerns. This is the role we're looking at. Are there any concerns with this compared to what we've seen and what we've heard today? And not a debate about, which we have, and let's face it, we'll have many, many, many more times, a debate about the project.
Yeah, I think this could be in danger of going round in circles slightly. So I think we'll proceed to a vote. It has been suggested that it be agreed to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Scott Parson to the office of Chair of Oxford Street Development Corporation. There are 4 voting members here. Does anyone have any objection to that? But that we have a majority in favour of that it be agreed to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with his appointment of Scott Parson to the office of Chair of Oxford Street Development Corporation.
We'll record those objections by name. Yeah. Good.
Yes, can do.
And any objections to that can be recorded. Thank you very much. There's no other business, and I will then close the meeting.